1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 1. Elkanah lived in Ramah, a town in the hill country of Ephraim. His great-great-grandfather was Zuph. So Elkanah was a member of the Zuph clan of the Ephraim tribe. Elkanah's father was Jeroham. His grandfather was Elihu, and his great-grandfather was Tohu. Elkanah had 2 wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Although Peninnah had children, Hannah did not have any. Once a year, Elkanah traveled from his hometown to Shiloh, where he worshiped the Lord all-powerful and offered sacrifices. Eli was the Lord's priest there, and his 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, served with him as priests. Whenever Elkanah offered a sacrifice, he gave some of the meat to Peninnah and some to each of her sons and daughters. But he gave Hannah even more, because he loved Hannah very much, even though the Lord had kept her from having children of her own. Peninnah liked to make Hannah feel miserable about not having any children, especially when the family went to the house of the Lord each year. One day, Elkanah was there offering a sacrifice, when Hannah began crying and refused to eat. So Elkanah asked,
"Hannah, why are you crying? Why won't you eat? Why do you feel so bad? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons?"
When the sacrifice had been offered, and they had eaten the meal, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli was sitting in his chair near the door to the place of worship. Hannah was broken-hearted and was crying as she prayed.
"Lord all-powerful, I am your servant, but I am so miserable. Please let me have a son. I will give him to you for as long as he lives, and his hair will never be cut."
Hannah prayed silently to the Lord for a long time, but her lips were moving, and Eli thought she was drunk.
"How long are you going to stay drunk?"
He asked.
"Sober up."
"Sir, please don't think I'm no good.
Hannah answered.
I'm not drunk and I haven't been drinking, but I do feel miserable and terribly upset. I've been praying all this time, telling the Lord about my problems."
Eli replied,
"You may go home now and stop worrying. I'm sure the God of Israel will answer your prayer."
"Sir, thank you for being so kind to me."
Hannah said. Then she left, and after eating something, she felt much better. Elkanah and his family got up early the next morning and worshiped the Lord. Then they went back home to Ramah. Later the Lord blessed Elkanah and Hannah with a son. She named him Samuel, because she had asked the Lord for him. The next time Elkanah and his family went to offer their yearly sacrifice, he took along a gift that he had promised to give to the Lord. But Hannah stayed home because she had told Elkanah,
"Samuel and I won't go until he's old enough for me to stop nursing him. Then I'll give him to the Lord, and he can stay there at Shiloh for the rest of his life."
"You know what's best.
Elkanah said.
Stay here until it's time to stop nursing him. I'm sure the Lord will help you do what you have promised."
Hannah did not go to Shiloh until she stopped nursing Samuel. When it was the time of the year to go to Shiloh again, Hannah and Elkanah took Samuel to the Lord's house. They brought along a 3-year-old bull, a 20-pound sack of flour, and a clay jar full of wine. Hannah and Elkanah offered the bull as a sacrifice, then brought the little boy to Eli.
"Sir,
Hannah said,
a few years ago I stood here beside you and asked the Lord to give me a child. Here he is. The Lord gave me just what I asked for. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will be the Lord's servant for as long as he lives."
1 Samuel chapter 2. Elkanah worshipped the Lord there at Shiloh, and Hannah prayed,
"You make me strong and happy, Lord. You rescued me. Now I can be glad and laugh at my enemies. No other God is like you. We're safer with you than on a high mountain. I can tell those proud people, 'Stop your boasting. Nothing is hidden from the Lord, and he judges what we do.' Our Lord, you break the bows of warriors, but you give strength to everyone who stumbles. People who once had plenty to eat must now hire themselves out for only a piece of bread. but you give the hungry more than enough to eat. A woman did not have a child, and you gave her 7, but a woman who had many was left with none. You take away life, and you give life. You send people down to the world of the dead and bring them back again. Our Lord, you are the one who makes us rich or poor. You put some in high positions and bring disgrace on others. You lift the poor and homeless out of the garbage dump and give them places of honor in royal palaces. You set the world on foundations, and they belong to you. You protect your loyal people, but everyone who is evil will die in darkness. We cannot win a victory by our own strength. Our Lord, those who attack you will be broken in pieces when you fight back with thunder from heaven. You will judge the whole earth and give power and strength to your chosen king.
Elkanah and Hannah went back home to Ramah, but the boy Samuel stayed to help Eli serve the Lord. Eli's sons were priests, but they were dishonest and refused to obey the Lord. So, while people were boiling the meat from their sacrifices, these priests would send over a servant with a large 3-pronged fork. The servant would stick the fork into the cooking pot, and whatever meat came out on the fork was taken back to the priests. That is how these 2 priests treated every Israelite who came to offer sacrifices in Shiloh. Sometimes, when people were offering sacrifices, the servant would come over even before the fat had been cut off and sacrificed to the Lord. Then the servant would tell them,
"The priest doesn't want his meat boiled. Give him some raw meat that he can roast."
Usually the people answered,
"Take what you want, but first let us sacrifice the fat to the Lord."
"No,"
the servant would reply.
"If you don't give it to me now, I'll take it by force."
Eli's sons did not show any respect for the sacrifices that the people offered. This was a terrible sin, and it made the Lord very angry. The boy Samuel served the Lord and wore a special linen garment and the clothes his mother made for him. She would bring new clothes every year when she and her husband came to offer sacrifices at Shiloh. Eli would always bless Elkanah and his wife and say,
Samuel was born in answer to your prayers. Now you have given him to the Lord. I pray that the Lord will bless you with more children to take his place.
After Eli had blessed them, Elkanah and Hannah would return home. The Lord was kind to Hannah, and she had 3 more sons and 2 daughters. But Samuel grew up at the Lord's house in Shiloh. Eli was now very old, and he heard what his sons were doing to the people of Israel.
Why are you doing these awful things?
He asked them.
I've been hearing nothing but complaints about you from all of the Lord's people. If you harm another person, God can help make things right between the 2 of you. But if you commit a crime against the Lord, no one can help you.
But the Lord had already decided to kill them, so he kept them from listening to their father. Each day the Lord and his people liked Samuel more and more. One day a prophet came to Eli and gave him this message from the Lord.
When your ancestors were slaves of the king of Egypt, I came and showed them who I am. Out of all the tribes of Israel, I chose your family to be my priests. I wanted them to offer sacrifices and burn incense to me, and to find out from me what I want my people to do. I commanded everyone to bring their sacrifices here where I live, and I allowed you and your family to keep those that were not offered to me on the altar. But you honor your sons instead of me. You don't respect the sacrifices and offerings that are brought to me, and you've all gotten fat from eating the best parts. I am the Lord, the God of Israel. I promised to always let your families serve me as priests, but now I tell you that I cannot do this any longer. I honor anyone who honors me, but I put a curse on anyone who hates me. The time will come when I will kill you and everyone else in your family. Not one of you will live to an old age. Your family will have a lot of trouble. I will be kind to Israel, but everyone in your family will die young. If I let anyone from your family be a priest, his life will be full of sadness and sorrow. But most of the men in your family will die a violent death. To prove to you that I will do these things, your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, will die on the same day. I have chosen someone else to be my priest, someone who will be faithful and obey me. I will always let his family serve as priests and help my chosen king. But if anyone is left from your family, he will come to my priest and beg for money or a little bread. He may even say to my priest, "Please let me be a priest, so I will at least have something to eat."
1 Samuel, chapter 3. Samuel served the Lord by helping Eli the priest, who was by that time almost blind. In those days the Lord hardly ever spoke directly to people, and he did not appear to them in dreams very often. But one night Eli was asleep in his room, and Samuel was sleeping on a mat near the sacred chest in the Lord's house. They had not been asleep very long when the Lord called out Samuel's name.
"Here I am."
Samuel answered. Then he ran to Eli and said,
"Here I am. What do you want?"
I didn't call you.
Eli answered.
Go back to bed.
Samuel went back. Again the Lord called out Samuel's name. Samuel got up and went to Eli.
"Here I am."
He said.
"What do you want?"
Eli told him,
Son, I didn't call you. Go back to sleep.
The Lord had not spoken to Samuel before, and Samuel did not recognize the voice. When the Lord called out his name for the 3rd time, Samuel went to Eli again and said,
"Here I am. What do you want?"
Eli finally realized that it was the Lord who was speaking to Samuel. So he said,
Go back and lie down. If someone speaks to you again, answer, I'm listening, Lord. What do you want me to do?
Once again Samuel went back and lay down. The Lord then stood beside Samuel and called out as he had done before.
Samuel! Samuel!
"I'm listening."
Samuel answered.
"What do you want me to do?"
The Lord said,
Samuel, I'm going to do something in Israel that will shock everyone who hears about it. I will punish Eli and his family just as I promised. He knew that his sons refused to respect me, and he let them get away with it, even though I said I would punish his family forever. I warned Eli that sacrifices or offerings could never make things right. His family has done too many disgusting things.
The next morning, Samuel got up and opened the doors to the Lord's house. He was afraid to tell Eli what the Lord had said, but Eli told him,
Samuel, my boy, come here.
"Here I am."
Samuel answered. Eli said,
What did God say to you? Tell me everything. I pray that God will punish you terribly if you don't tell me every word he said.
Samuel told Eli everything. Then Eli said,
He is the Lord, and he will do what's right.
As Samuel grew up, the Lord helped him and made everything Samuel said come true. From the town of Dan in the north to the town of Beersheba in the south, everyone in the country knew that Samuel was truly the Lord's prophet. The Lord often appeared to Samuel at Shiloh and told him what to say. 1 Samuel chapter 4. Then Samuel would speak to the whole nation of Israel. One day the Israelites went out to fight the Philistines. They set up camp near Ebenezer, and the Philistines camped at Aphek. The Philistines made a fierce attack. They defeated the Israelites and killed about 4,000 of them. The Israelite army returned to their camp, and the leaders said,
"Why did the Lord let us lose to the Philistines today? Let's get the sacred chest, where the Lord's agreement with Israel is kept. Then the Lord will help us and rescue us from our enemies."
The army sent some soldiers to bring back the sacred chest from Shiloh, because the Lord All-Powerful has his throne on the winged creatures on top of the chest. As Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, brought the chest into camp, the army cheered so loudly that the ground shook. The Philistines heard the noise and said,
"What are those Hebrews shouting about?"
When the Philistines learned that the sacred chest had been brought into the camp, they were scared to death and said,
"The gods have come into their camp. Now we're in real trouble. Nothing like this has ever happened to us before. We're in big trouble. Who can save us from these powerful gods? They're the same gods who made all those horrible things happen to the Egyptians in the desert. Philistines, be brave and fight hard. If you don't, those Hebrews will rule us just as we've been ruling them. Fight and don't be afraid."
The Philistines did fight. They killed 30,000 Israelite soldiers, and all the rest ran off to their homes. Hophni and Phinehas were killed, and the sacred chest was captured. That same day, a soldier from the tribe of Benjamin ran from the battlefront to Shiloh. He had torn his clothes and put dirt on his head to show his sorrow. He went into town and told the news about the battle, and everyone started crying. Eli was afraid that something might happen to the sacred chest, so he was sitting on his chair beside the road just waiting. He was 98 years old and blind, but he could hear everyone crying, and he asked,
"What's all that noise?"
The soldier hurried over and told Eli,
"I escaped from the fighting today and ran here."
"Young man, what happened?"
Eli asked.
"Israel ran away from the Philistines,"
the soldier answered.
"Many of our people were killed, including your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas. But worst of all, the sacred chest was captured."
Eli was still sitting on a chair beside the wall of the town gate. And when the man said that the Philistines had taken the sacred chest, Eli fell backward. He was a very heavy old man, and the fall broke his neck and killed him. He had been a leader of Israel for 40 years. The wife of Phinehas was about to give birth, and soon after she heard that the sacred chest had been captured and that her husband and his father had died, her baby came. The birth was very hard, and she was dying. But the women taking care of her said,
"Don't be afraid, it's a boy."
She didn't pay any attention to them. Instead, she kept thinking about losing her husband and her father-in-law. So she said,
My son will be named Ichabod, because the glory of Israel left our country when the sacred chest was captured.